Okay, so let me start today's webinar. Good evening, everyone, and let me welcome you all at the webinar on revitalization of urban spaces that is organized jointly by the Embassy of Poland in Iran and Safavi House Cultural Center from Isfahan. This is the webinar that brings together professionals and officials from Poland and Iran. This is the first webinar out of 3 on the topic of urban revitalization and regeneration. During today's event, the speakers will describe innovative methods of work that may be applied in planning and executing revitalization of urban areas. The next webinar that's going to be on the 17th of November will cover the question of inspiring entrepreneurship in historical, peripheral, and post-industrial districts. The third seminar on the 24th of November will be dedicated to the role of cultural institutions in increasing the potential of urban districts. Let me also mention that the webinars are a part of a broader initiative led by the Safavi House, that is Cultural Exchange Talk, that provide an online venue for experts from Iran and other countries to discuss different cultural subjects. Now, before I give the floor to Mrs. Irena Kołakowska-Falkowska, who represents the Embassy of the Republic of Poland, and invite her to guide us through the general idea of the series of webinars, I will introduce today's noble guests and presenters. We have 3 speakers today, 2 from Iran and 1 from Poland. And I kindly ask your understanding for any possible mistakes in pronunciation. First, we'll give a floor to Dr. Katarzyna Sadovych, who is an architect and economist. She's an assistant professor in Warsaw School of Economics, who combines academic career with practice in the field of interdisciplinary urban studies. She's an author and editor of papers and books about the relation between tangible urban environment and socioeconomic conditions. Of the Polish Architects Association Warsaw branch recommendation for the revitalization of Praga Północ, which is the heritage district in Warsaw, and also the main co-author of the Warsaw Local Centers program that was developed as a network of urban sub-centers in 2015. She also acted as a member of the advising board for innovative policies for the mayor of city of Warsaw and member of Warsaw Roundtable for Climate Adaptation. She's also a member of City Architectural and Urban Council since 2016. Then we'll ask Mrs. Mahshid Sahizadeh, who holds a master's degree in architecture from the University of Tehran Fine Arts faculty and a PhD in urban design with a focus on urban restoration from Newcastle University in the UK. She has worked more than 2 decades as an architect and urban designer in consulting engineers, scientific and cultural institute, and cultural heritage organizations. Since 1997, she has been also teaching and researching in several universities. She also presented the results of these researches in numerous conferences, books, and journals, mainly in the field of urban regeneration, public spaces, and restoration of historical areas. As a consultant to the Renovation Organization of Tehran from 2010 to 2015, she was among the pioneers who were involved in establishing and managing local offices for providing services to facilitate the renewal process in degraded neighborhoods. Dr. Sahizadeh will make a presentation on behalf of hers and Dr. Hamad C.E.Talk. And she'll speak about the initiatives they have undertaken together. And Dr. Mohammad Sahizadeh received his master's degree from Tehran University and a PhD from the Newcastle University in UK. He also received the Research of the Year award in 1996 from the Iranian Ministries of Culture and Science. He started his professional career as an expert in Naqsh Jahan Consulting Engineer, then as a General Director Office of Researches and Studies in the Iranian Ministry of Housing and Urban Development. Then he was an assistant professor at Bouali Sina University, School of Art and Architecture, Urban Design Group. And he was also the Deputy Minister of Urban Regeneration, of Architecture and Urban Planning, and also the Deputy Minister of Roads and Urban Development. Currently, he works as a member of Iran Company's Board of Directors. Dr. Sahizadeh also teaches in the areas of urban regeneration and conservation, with focus on the quality of life, public space improvement, and the adaptive reuse of historic building. He also works to establish a model for participatory design and tools for engaging communities in the design and planning processes. We'll have those presentation in the first part of our sessions. Then we're going to have the Q&A session. So I would like to encourage the audience also to send us the questions via chat room. And now let me give the floor to Irena Kołakowska-Fołkowska. Irena.
Thank you very much, Agata. A warm welcome to everyone, to the panelists and to the audience. Warm welcome on behalf of Embassy of Poland in Iran. We're delighted to host today's event with Safavi House of Isfahan. And let me convey my words of high appreciation to Safavi House and Dr. Mohammad Reza Ghanei personally for initiating this project, and to Mrs. Elnaz Rabayapayan for co-organizing it. This series of webinars is the result of our discussion in Isfahan when we were searching for points of common interest between Iran and Poland on the local and municipal levels. Revitalization of urban spaces appeared as a convenient ground for cultural dialogue. Demand for this topic is universal. Revitalization increases quality of life of citizens, enhances touristic potential, and improves economic performance of cities, just to name a few benefits. Both countries, Iran and Poland, have vast experience in this regard, but also face demanding challenges. And therefore, we should share them for our common advantage. The aim of the 3 November webinars on revitalization is to provide platform for discussion between experts and practitioners from Poland and Iran, so that they can meet their counterparts from other countries, identify most interesting topics, and hopefully establish working relations, so that we could continue the debate in 2022. I look into the future with optimism and a desire to next year organize an in-person conference on this topic in Iran, so that we can allow for building deeper relations and enhance cooperation between our two countries. But now I wish you an enjoyable evening online, and I wish you fruitful discussions. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And I would like to invite Dr. Sadova. Zhina, the floor is yours. I will share the presentation now.
Good evening to everyone, and I very much appreciate this possibility to present our work here in Warsaw, because of course it is not only my achievement, things I would like to present today, but the achievement of the really rather extensive team of people. And thank you very much for this invitation. I am grateful to both Polish Embassy and Safavi House for this meeting, which is for me a very good opportunity also to learn more about Isfahan, and I hope to share our experience. What I would like to present today is the method of work or methods of work. As it was mentioned earlier, I have been involved in the process of Warsaw Revitalization, as it's officially called, or Regeneration, for some years now, not working in the official capacity for the city of Warsaw, but as an advisor, mostly through my main affiliation in this respect. This is Warsaw branch of Polish Architects Association. So this is the first thing I must mention. It wouldn't happen without this professional NGO as a partner for the municipality. This affiliation is very, very important for me in general, and this evening especially, as it is in itself an example of cooperation between professionals, but also the non-governmental organization and public administration, in this case, the municipality. And another example of cooperation, which is embedded in this model, is this a bit abused even now, used and abused word interdisciplinary. But as you will see, it is really true that this is interdisciplinary work. And this is my deep belief that this is very important to involve various stakeholders in the process. And this is the method which we found really fruitful, of course, having its bottlenecks, having its challenges, which I will also discuss a bit later. So the next slide, please. Thank you. As a start, I would like to say a few words about Warsaw, because I'm sure this could be helpful for those who are not familiar with the city. It is not a great agglomeration. It has more or less 2.5 million inhabitants. And on this slide, you can see the main urban structure of the city. So the Vistula River cuts the city in half, which is really crucial for what we are talking about today, because if I would be crude, I would say everything important, everything sophisticated, everything connected to the capital role of capital city role of Warsaw happens on the left bank, when you can see the city center, the old town, and the silhouette of the Palace of Culture and the modern heritage of Warsaw. But the regeneration program is connected to the Pragas district on the other side of the river. It was introduced into the administrative borders quite late, and its development is mostly due to the industrial development in the 19th century, with all its chaos, with all its social problems and societal challenges, and all this energy also, and the business environment, which is so typical for the 19th century industrial cities in Europe. So on the next slide, we can see what is also so very special about Praga district, which is not, as I said, sophisticated, elegant. The architecture was not in the same league in the general understanding of what is really important and can be valued. The very specific thing happened as most of the Warsaw and 8% of the city center on the left bank was destroyed during the war. What was left is especially precious for us because this is authentic. This is this small bit of the past which still can be preserved for the future generations. However, during several decades after the war, during the centrally planned economic period, it was not cherished and it was not valued. It was left in bad repair. However, with some investments for new factories and again for new industrial development. There are 3 districts, as you can see on the following slides. There are 3 districts which will be present today, in a week, and in 2 weeks, because today I will talk about Praga Północ district, so this north part of the district, and there is also the south part of the district, and next week Targówek district, which is also very specific, will be discussed in the context of the support for the entrepreneurial environment in Warsaw. However, going to the next slide, we can see that Praga Północ, Praga North is the main area in which I'm interested, and also it was at the very heart of the former revitalization program, because right now we are acting under the second revitalization program, and the third agenda is a work in progress, as the next year is the last year of the ongoing revitalization program. I had the honor and the pleasure to work with the interdisciplinary team to provide some recommendations for this current revitalization program, and you can see we produced a small book which was quite popular for people interested in revitalization of Praga Północ. It was the result of the workshop that I would like to talk about, and this was the first stage of the new forms of cooperation between this OW SERP, this is this Warsaw branch of Polish Architects Association, with municipality. So on the next slide, we can see the stakeholders involved in this workshop. What is important, it was initiated by the municipality, but I think it was also initiated because the municipality saw the partner which is there and can be approached to really provide some results. And the method of the work was mainly proposed by Warsaw branch of Polish Architects Association. However, from the very beginning, a lot of stakeholders were present, and finally they found their roles in the formal structure of the workshop. So looking at the very sectorial point of view, there is the municipality, the main partner, also the financial partner, because the funds for the workshop was provided by the municipality. However, if you want a successful regeneration program, you must find the entrepreneurs and the businesses which are already there or are ready to go there and thrive in this regenerated or regenerating area. So we didn't have, strictly speaking, the entrepreneurs in the workshop. However, the representatives of the business environment, let's say from the organization representing entrepreneurs, were there, and the NGO, as I said, the main partner and the organizer was an NGO. However, people who were involved in the process also were involved with various NGOs in Warsaw, local organizations for years, already working for Praga district. And if we look at this interdisciplinary part of the thing, there were architects, urban planners, economists, sociologists, some psychologists. It is very important, but I must warn you, and as I know our colleagues here are also the architects, if architects are present, they tend to be leaders and to overshadow other specialists in the field. at least this is the case in Warsaw. And this is very important also for the organizer to provide enough space for these other specialists, and not only the architects and urban planners make the. We decided to create a jury, so the body who first was involved in preparation of the rules of the workshop, of deciding how we work and what we want to achieve. And then we had an open call for the working teams or designing teams, whatever you want to call them. This is the slide with 4 teams, but the truth is we had, if memory serves me right now, we had 6 teams. In other workshops within the same framework, we had different number of teams. It depends on the funds in the first place, but also in the method of work and time that you have to spend, because more teams means, of course, longer working hours, and the jury must be prepared to really put a lot of effort in working with all the teams. These teams had to be interdisciplinary. This is, even if we're the professional NGO, we're architects, urban planners, it's very important for us to cooperate with other specialists. Some of us have 2 hats, like myself, but we really wanted this. Each team had to have 1 architect or urban planner, 1 specialist from social sciences, so mostly economists or sociologists, and 1 other specialist. If we work strictly with heritage, we insist on having the heritage specialist on the team. So let's look on the next slide. I shall see that what was difficult at the beginning for everybody to understand that it was not a competition. So the aim was not to pick the best result out of 6 or 4 or whatever the number was. And it was not to find the best solution. I think that this is very good, a very good way of working together because of that. For architects, it was difficult because this is what we are used to have architectural competitions, to not know what others are doing, and to expect to win, to want to win, to be the best. In this version of reality, we had a lot of working meetings, only the teams and the jury, but teams together. They were also discussing things between them. They were discussing things with the jury. They were offering their advices to each other. It wasn't, very easy thing. As I said, we're not used to, and at least we were not so much used to this way of cooperation. So people are shy or just tending to hold cards close to their chest and so on. But in the end, I think it worked quite nicely for everyone. And we also had some public presentations, not only of the work already done and nicely put on slides or in a small book or whatever, but during the work, we had some public presentations with the work in progress presented to the interested general public, who also could comment or ask questions, and it was also very helpful for the teams. So you can see the next slide and the results. What can be expected of this type of the workshop? We published the recommendations. You saw the little booklet. It is important that it was rather small booklet. It wasn't extensive report or anything. You could really read it or something, and still, if I may say so myself, it's full of useful recommendation, but it's very brief. Part of that was introduced into the revitalization program. I know that the specialist of the revitalization program will be present next week, so I would not elaborate on that, but we are very happy to see our work really put into use by the official municipal document. And this was the first of this type of workshop for us. And what we found was that it was really useful, transferable method of cooperation, which other people can use, which we can use in various configurations and situations. Right now, I'm also involved in the project, which uses these and similar experiences. And on the next slide, you can see the project, Open Heritage. It is the project founded by European Commission within the Horizon 2020. And you can see the logo of the project, and you can see the logos of all our colleagues. There are 16 partners. So this is rather geographically extended project, but this 16 with the 16 partners, there are 6 who are responsible for the living labs in their city, and Warsaw is one of them. This is called Praga Lab. So on the next slide, you can see the heart of our Praga Lab. This is the bakery. This is an unused bakery in Praga district in Praga North, and this is a print from our website. I would be happy if you have a look at this website later. You will find information that I can present right now. It's in Polish and in English. And this is also a good story. Why the bakery? We're providing the recommendation for the whole district and hopefully a transferable and scalable recommendations. But we needed something which would focus experiment, and we found this unused bakery. It was a bakery for over 100 years, but now for over 15 years it is vacant. So this is the problem: how to make such a place alive and not to lose its heritage value, how to find the money, which is not the typical money for the commercial investments, because there is no interest from the commercial environment for this bakery, but even for the better, perhaps, because much heritage values are lost in such a process. But for the municipality is really a burden to invest in such a building, and it's difficult to also to find the financial models. This is our role in the project, to find a way in which we can make such places alive. This is an ongoing project, so we do not have the final answers yet, but still we have some ideas and also some work done already. On the next slide, you can see part of the rules of the workshop which we held. It was prepared very much in the same way that this original, let's say, workshop for Praga North. So the main elements of the work you can see here. I am not the fan of such a long text on the slide, so forgive me that I put here, but I think that this is important. Tailoring the goal, it took a lot of time for us, not to jump and to decide this is what we want. We will launch the competition or the open call for the teams in 2 weeks. No, we really used a lot of time to tailor the goals together with various stakeholders, with the municipality, various bodies from the municipality, because this is a very complex ecosystem in Warsaw, but also from with some entrepreneurs, with some NGOs, with some independent specialists in various fields. And then they became members of the jury. So you already know the drill. Then we had an open call for these interdisciplinary teams. They had to be at least 3 persons in the team. Again, architect, economist, because we are looking for the economic solutions, and heritage specialist. we had much bigger teams. People were really interested in participating. We invited finally 2 teams, but we had 9 propositions. So we felt that there is really a lot of enthusiasm about it. We worked all together, and then the jury was responsible for tailoring the final result, so to give their opinions, and we as the Praga Lab team were responsible for the final recommendation, and they are the basis for further work. So on the next slide, you can see what goals were most important for us and what we still see as the main challenge. The words in bold are the most important. What are really the heritage values? This is a listed building, so it is a very easy thing to look at the information about bakery, and there are heritage values. But heritage values are something which should be negotiated and discussed with the community also. What is the heritage community? Who cares if it's still there? Who cares if it's adapted or reused or changed or demolished? And if people care, why do they care? What values do they see in this? It is important also that this is not necessarily the question to the general public, but the community can encompass specialists in the field. But there must be some broader body than just a small team like us. It is sure that this place needs new use, but what kind of use? Another important thing, we want to find the continuity not only in bakery, but also in the intangible heritage. What was there and what will be there should be somehow connected, also use related. And of course, the financing and the funds and the ways of management, this is very important. On the next slide, you can see the small poster that we used for the promotion of the workshop. Of course, we also used our contacts, the grapevines, to make people aware in the most legal and transparent way always. But it is important to really reach people that you do not know of, who can be important for this place, who can really be the community of this place, and they are sometimes unknown to people who are involved with the main process. So it's very important all this promotional work also to be done. And it's also important to reach people who can be not only emotionally involved, who care for this place, who love it, who love the heritage in general. But of course, to find the partners, I guess there will be the space during the discussion maybe to talk more about it. But in Warsaw, we think that there is a really very strong and very innovative entrepreneurial environment. But for the micro businesses, for small entrepreneurs, it is often difficult to overcome the not only financial but administrational obstacles to really work with all these papers or to even learn about what is expected of them and so on. It's easy to give up if you're a small business and you have a lot on your plate and life is already hard, and to really be able to be involved with some heritage place. So this is something that we are currently working on. From financial support, municipality or the district administration or the conservatory office can offer to make such places available to businesses. So this would be just a glimpse of our work. We have been working for 3 years now. in this project, and for several years with several workshops of this kind in the Warsaw branch of SARP. So I would like to say thank you also, and you will see the names of my colleagues on the last slide, because this is me talking about it today, but I'm on the daily basis working with Dr. Dominika Brodowicz from also my alma mater, Warsaw School of Economics, and with Mahshid Sahizadeh, who is an architect and former voivodeship director of conservatory office, and right now involved with another very interesting piece of Warsaw heritage during the last of this free seminars. Also, my colleagues from the Open Heritage made all our work possible with their advices and discussions that we had. So once more, I would like to stress this point. It is very important and involve other people. One more reason why I'm so happy to be here together and to discuss this with you, with colleagues from Iran, or with people from attending this. Any comments about what values or whatever other things can also maybe open our eyes still to things we didn't think about.
I will have one question to you. You mentioned a little bit about this cooperation with small businesses, but if you would like to elaborate more on the public-private cooperation work.
There would be two answers to these questions, because the proper PPP, the proper public-private cooperation, according to our legislation, also is usually meant for big projects. It is costly, also for the businesses involved. It takes few years for the first phase of the negotiations before even putting the final call for partners. So it's very difficult for small businesses. We hope to find the solution, which is not the typical PPP cooperation, but even if it's, let's say, a soft version, what is very important is, as I said, in public partner cooperation, it's not only about the funds that somebody has and somebody hasn't. It's about sharing risks. The small business is very much risky business, and municipality can be a partner which diminishes this risk, of course, in exchange for something that this small business can offer to the society, to the community, especially in heritage areas, by having the employees from the area, or by opening the heritage site in which they are operating to the broad. Or from the administration is very important in terms of let's call it papers. This is something which is very difficult sometimes. All this administration process, all these papers to be filled for, and small businesses are really in need in this kind of course, as I said, legal and transparent, but support that they can simply deal with their core business. They do not have special people employed for the formal stuff. They need someone who would help them with that, and municipality can do that. This is the result of our discussion with businesses and municipalities, that advice and administrative support is very much needed and ready to be offered by the municipality too.
Thank you very much. And one more question. You said that it was actually the authorities of Warsaw that initiated the whole work. How did you keep the balance between the so-called the ownership of the process and taking into account the views of the public in the project, of other stakeholders?
Of course, this is the tricky part. You're perfectly right. A very good one, because even with the best will on all sides, of course, this is always tricky. Sometimes it's more difficult, in my experience with this workshop. Sometimes it's more difficult to appoint the small team of the persons who are finally responsible for the recommendation, because these processes were really open. It was not a problem to really learn about the expectations, and what is really important is to really translate these expectations into the practical processes. And this is the task for a small team of specialists, but public consultations, and as I said, involvement of various stakeholders, because if I said there were an NGO involved or some association of small businesses of so on, it is not that there is one or two persons. Of course, but what is important is that they know other people. They know people from the community, they know their neighbors, they know other entrepreneurs, and they are not only talking for themselves, but they are talking for the broader group of people. In what an architectural competition, so much stricter process, we had NGOs involved, and because it was for the specific area with several local NGOs very active, they were taking turns. At each meeting, there was a different representative. It was very difficult to work with them, as you can imagine, but it was doable. You can do that. You can invite people, and still it is important there is somebody who feels responsible for the final result. I hope this answers the question. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll probably go back to it if we have more questions from the attendees. And now I would like to invite Dr. Mahshid Sahizadeh, and I understand that you will be sharing also the floor with Dr. Izadi. Okay.
So we are talking about the new trend in revitalizing historic urban core in Iran, and we're going to do that by introducing 5 cases very shortly. But before that, we will also talk about some other stages of these changes, that what has been going on, that we arrived at this point, when it comes to revitalization and regeneration. So can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah, at the beginning, we'll start with the fact that the history of urban settlements in Iran is quite long. And that's why we are dealing with so many historic fabrics in Iran, So having such a long history in urban settlements, not just settlements, we need to pay attention to this point. And then we need to talk about the fact that the conservation rules, plans, and programs have been started in Iran quite early, compared even to many European countries, even to England, I can say, So it's a long time that we have rules and laws and several plans and programs for the safeguarding of our historic areas. And despite this fact, we still have a lot of problems in them, and we'll try to find the troubleshooting and why it's like that. And at the end, in conclusion, introduce the reasons and trying to find some solutions, not at this session, maybe in another session. But then we'll talk about this new wave of modernization after 1930s in Iran, and how it has been in a permanent challenge with conservation approaches, and the reason that it's overcome the conservation policies more in most historic cities of Iran. So then the fourth part of the talk will be about urban conservation and renewal since 1980s, after the Islamic Revolution. What has happened mainly in the field of our job, and kind of different strategies and approaches we have been dealing with since then. The gradual evolution actually of intellectual thoughts and professional issue of conservation, urban conservation and renewal. And then these new trends, we will focus only on, not on the results or the procedure of work, mostly on the methods of work and who has done, why in the aspect of methods of work, these trends are different from each other. And we'll continue with these introducing these 5 trends through giving these 5 examples in these cities. It doesn't mean that the reason that we call them trend is that they, although we give this one example for each trend, they continue in some other cities, but these were actually some of the most successful examples of each approach in the matter of methods of work. We'll talk about Tabriz as the cultural, as a cooperation between Cultural Heritage Organization and stakeholders in the Bazaar of Tabriz. And then we'll talk about Yazd, the city at the central desert of Iran, which is a very good example of cooperation between public and private organizations, much vaster than just cultural heritage or just bazaars. It's the private sector is more extensive, and also the public sector as well, compared to the first trend. And then we'll talk about the experience of the city of Kashan, which is the beginning of a new trend, mostly run by private sector. And it's an adaptive and creative reuse of old buildings, of historic buildings, and the role that private sector mainly played at this city. And then there are some other examples in Isfahan and in Yazd and other cities as well. But we can see the best results in Kashan so far. And then the fourth trend we're gonna introduce is urban catalyst policy in Gorgan, and northern city in Iran. And finally, we're going to talk about Shiraz, which shows the changing role of municipalities as semi-public sectors in Iran, which has always been mostly dealing with construction rather than preservation in historic areas. But recently, and in this case, in the case of Shiraz, we see that they have successfully actually entered and accepted the role of a more active role in preservation and protection of historic areas of the city, rather than just a reconstruction of these areas. So, and in the conclusion, we will give our own actually ideas about why some of these trends, although they had very good results, but they were not successful enough, and what we need now actually following this new trends. So can I have the next slide, please? Yeah, so as I said, there's a long history of urban settlements in Iran. It's more than 5,000 years history of urbanization, although the history of being settled, I mean, human settlements in Iran is much longer than that, with pastoral life and animal breeding and agricultural settlements more than 12,000 years. But cities, as with their own fabrics and historic fabrics and civilizations that we are dealing with, although we may not see, it's just excavation, archaeological excavations that prove that. And what we see are mostly not more than 300-400 years ago, at most parts, but actually the morphology of the urban fabric is can be seen in some parts. Very few, unfortunately, is left. But this history actually shows that we are dealing with a large number of these cities in these historical cities in so many different parts of Iran. Next, please. So these are just some, no, the previous one. These are just some examples of what we are dealing with at the moment. So as you see, they are quite vast. Several hectares of them are in front of us now to deal with and solve their problems. Many of them, unfortunately, are not very, despite of all their beauties, they are not very favorable by their residents. They try to find a way to go to newer parts because of the problems that they have to be harmonized and to be adapted to contemporary life of cities, mostly because of their access network, which is narrow, and there are so many other problems in their infrastructures. And we are trying to keep them as safe as possible while and giving them the new infrastructures while people without actually harming their beauties and their architectural values. You can see Isfahan in the bottom, and so many other cities like Birjand or for example, Yazd or Semnan, and the northern city of Gorgan as well. Next, please. Next, please. Yeah, so as I said, the previous one. Yeah, so as I said, this long history actually caused the attention to them quite early. And as you see, the image of some of our earliest rules and regulations about preservation of historic areas in Iran and antiquities, and the different laws for keeping and safeguarding the monuments, historic monuments. The first one, the number shows actually 1926. Next, we have it in some other, in the next slide. If you go to the next one. Yeah, so this list actually shows some of the earliest trials of Iranians for the safeguard of their historic monuments and historic areas in different cities. I haven't translated all of the list in the right side, just the most important ones. As you see, we started as early as 1907 by establishing the Office of Antiquities. So that was the first legal administration for dealing with excavations and ancient building, archaeological excavations and ancient buildings. As early as 1907, we still didn't have any rule for the whole fabric, the whole urban fabric. It was just monuments and buildings. And then in 1924, we had this regulations, Antiquities Regulation, which talks in different items about the importance of safeguarding them and preservation of these historic buildings. We have our first conference in 1925 by an Iranologist whose name was Arthur Pope, and although he was not Iranian, but he worked all his life on Iran and is buried in Isfahan. And we also had our first list of listed historical buildings in 1925, and 4 years later, a long one. So as you see, it's quite a long list, which is not the subject of our talk now. I'm just showing this to tell you that the methods of work, there have been trials to start quite early. And one of the reasons that they are not successful, maybe it's because of the vastness, the humongous amount of stuff that we have to deal with. So we had seminars even as early as international seminars on the issue as early as 1950s, and also approval of different laws for the safeguarding of these elements. So the next one, please. Yeah, so these are some of the plans and programs that we started for example, the city of Shiraz, as you see in this map, has been provided by the University of Tehran and also some other colleagues in the ministry to for helping to solving the problems of the historic core. Next one, please. Also in Isfahan, we had a group of British people helping with our consultants, our architects, to deal with the Safavid period in Isfahan, but what we had finished quarter in Isfahan. Next, please. Or also in Tehran as well. We can go faster. These are just some photos of some examples. Yeah. So this one, I should also talk about the huge force of modernization after 1930, which was the main problem for our historic areas, and it caused an opposing force actually to conservation. They were not complementary at the moment, as we will see in next slides in regeneration approaches. At the beginning, as you see, they were just cutting through the historic core for the sake of car access to different parts, and they thought that this is the best way, following the Haussmann, ideas in historic cores in different cities, as you see. So it continued from with the discovery of oil, I can say. In 1940s, after the Second World War mostly, which brought a huge income to the country, and also caused so many destructions in our historic cores. And mostly after 1970s, and by the advent of revolution, we can categorize what has happened since 1980s into 6 periods, actually. From 1980 for 11 years until 1991, we had this rehabilitation projects mostly, which were not dealing with any kind of road construction or any new projects. They were mainly rehabilitating what we had from the past, and also one of the reasons was because it was exactly overlapped with the years of war with Iraq. As you see, from 1980 to 1991, we did not have enough funds for doing much bigger works. It was mostly rehabilitation, just cleaning the areas and trying to rehabilitate the area and the facades of the streets and the infrastructures in a very practical level, actually. But from 1991 to 95, during the years after war, we started one of the first ideas for preserving and saving the historic areas, not just only because of the damages that they had during the war with Iraq, but also because of not being protected for such a long time after the revolution, and even before that. There wasn't any public interest to that at the beginning. So the government itself, the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development, defines 5 cities, 5 projects as and called them cultural historical access. We will go through the next slides to see what projects they were. And then from 95 to 98, we had the years that this oil income was in a way that government thought they can do huge projects in these areas, in central areas, and solve the problems of these central historic parts of the cities by amalgamation of these small plots and widening the streets and this kind of stuff. Unfortunately, and last much long, not more than 3 years, that kind of projects. And then from 98 to 2005, we had the establishment of UDRO, which is Urban Development and Revitalization Organization at that time. And the name has changed now. We will see later in the next slides, but it was the beginning. It was the initiation era of development and revitalization. They have been trying to actually follow a complementary strategy between development and conservation, and trying to do both wherever is needed. So it was a separate deputy at the ministry just for paying attention to the historic parts of Iranian cities. And then from 2005 to 2014, we had this renewal and reconstruction of dilapidated areas. There were some areas, vast parts of our histories that which were considered as dilapidated areas. And I will define them and what was the criteria to define these areas. And but that was with the help of low interest mortgages to owners and this kind of stuff, that as we'll see. So from 2014 till now, during the last 7 years, we are trying to have a much more integrated and following the urban regeneration rules as a complementary and holistic, as we'll see. Next slide, please.
You see the next slide, but if you could just a little bit faster so that we could focus on the, on the cities themselves, so that we wouldn't lose, the whole idea, and have some time for the discussion also. Sorry.
Yeah, because this wasn't I want to go through the new trends and the 5 cities that I'm going to talk, because this is just an introduction to tell you what has happened.
I understand.
During the time to get to that point, and it's 8:10 anyway. Okay, so this is just one of the. It's not any of those 5 case studies. It's just an example of the first period of our work, which was just rehabilitation, as I said, during the years of war. It's Jamal Quarter in Isfahan. That you see nothing happened except the improvement of infrastructures, and as you see the map here, there were just some alleys and some restructuring there. Do you want to add anything about Jamal?
These are the same example of
we can go. Okay. So the next one as well is just an example, some examples of the cultural historical axis. As I said, from 91 to 95, you see the plan, which was provided for Isfahan at the top. At that time, with the name of the project was Cultural Historical Axis, trying to define the historical part in need to the most amount of attention, and adding the areas which are important for the city culturally. So that has happened in Shiraz as well, as you see, and this is the backbone of the city and the ancient, the historic bazaar of the city. And okay, so I'm not gonna go more through that. So the next phase, as you see, it's amalgamation of small plots. It changed, the plans that consultants provided, architects provided at the time, they were not respectful to the historic morphology of these parts of the city, unfortunately. As you see in the right side, that's the very ancient city of Mashhad, more than 1,000 years history of holy shrine of Imam Reza, which was the main reason of shaping this city during the centuries. But unfortunately, this is the model that consultant has provided, and the morphology that it presented and suggested is totally different from the story. Even the direction of the fabric is totally different. So, and we have always also some other examples. So the next slide, you see even at the same historic city of Mashhad, in some parts, they even had high rises, and they thought the inner growth was not just preserving, and they were just using the land, at that part, and making high rises. but it wasn't executed, was it? It is? Yeah. So people are living there at the moment? Oh yeah, unfortunately people are living there and the project is finished. Okay, so the next one. Yeah, so from 98, as I said, this with the establishment of this organization, UDRO, Urban Development and Revitalization Organization, the approach of development and revitalization started. So they tried, these are the models that architects and consultants provided. For example, they try, this is Isfahan, which is called Old Square. It is a Seljuk square, long before Safavids and during Seljuks. And it was full of, during the time, for example, the square was filled with constructions. And what the consultant has presented at that time in this project was emptying and returning the square back to the humongous size that it had under Seljuks. So, and also in Shiraz as well, and in other cities. So they had several projects in different cities by this organization. And I have to say that the method of work that they were using during the time, from the beginning, from the establishment in 98, is totally different to what they have. But unfortunately, with the change of management, as we will see in conclusion, that management is one of the problems. They approaches and strategies were different. Sometimes it was leaned more towards development and sometimes more towards conservation and revitalization of these areas. So next, please. So from 2005 to 2014, until 7 years ago, we had this, I have to say, not very plausible and not very common agreement on it. Not so many architects or consultants are agree, but this was something which was approved by law, that any parts of a city in Iran which has these three criteria, it is called it is known as a dilapidated area. So any urban context with more than 50% unstable building, impermeable alleys, and fine-grained plots is considered dilapidated area, and landowners in this area can benefit from low-interest mortgages for reconstruction of their homes. It actually started because we had plenty of earthquakes, and it caused authorities to worry a lot about the residents of these areas, because they were their houses were not safe, and the access network was quite narrow to help them in problems like that. They were not okay, yeah, they were not quite safe in their house because of being old and unstable, and the narrowness of the access network. No, the previous one I didn't have finished. Yeah, so as I said, with these three criteria, they defined large parts of our cities as dilapidated areas, and tried to make lots of reconstruction. It didn't change the morphology of the fabric as before, but it helped a lot of renovation in these areas. Yeah, thank you. So the next one. So the final strategy, actually, which is ongoing at the moment, is urban regeneration, which involves defining a strategic, integrated, long-term, flexible, and contextual framework for simultaneous development and protection in these areas. And let me bring it, yeah. And they try at the moment to have clear specific and achievable operational goals in the direction of macro scale. Both, they pay attention both to sustainable development goals in urban areas and also micro scale. So even urban spaces and improvement of public space in particular, as a facilitator and incentive for investors to come and make investments in these areas. And with maximum participation of all actors and stakeholders, that's what they are following now. So that ultimately prevent and solve urban problems to a sustainable, both economic and physical and social and environmental. That's their aim and goal. But unfortunately, although it has turned to law and it has turned to a national document and approved by the parliament, it cannot be followed everywhere at the same level, as we will see. So let's start with the next slide with the.
Okay, we've already had 25 minutes. So if you could probably focus on one of the cases and then I'll go to the conclusions, summing up, you know, the different aspects of the projects. Okay, yeah. I would be grateful.
So yeah, this is some photos that show this is the Vank Church in Isfahan, and some of the best examples that we have from this regeneration approach in Iran. Next, please. So these new trends, as I said at the beginning, can be divided into these 5 different methods of work between. Yeah, okay. So I'll speak about them on. No, next one. I will talk about them on the examples. So the first one, the first example I'm giving is Tabriz, which is a cooperation of Cultural Heritage Organization and stakeholders in the Bazaar of Tabriz. It was among the first examples of cooperation between a governmental body and next slide, please. Yeah, so as you see, the restoration of Tabriz Bazaar during the final years of 90s was the result of a successful cooperation between the Cultural Heritage Organization as a representative of other responsible bodies. They call it in Farsi Panjere Wahed, that I translated it into single window because Cultural Heritage Organization was the sole coordinator between the shop owners and people who were working in the bazaar and different governmental bodies that they had to deal with in the process of restoration, bazaar restoration. So that's why they call it single window, because the Cultural Heritage Organization was the sole coordinator, and they followed a step-by-step process, and it was a unique experience. It's a very large bazaar, historic bazaar. All our historic cities have traditional old bazaars, but the Bazaar of Tabriz is among the largest ones. And I have to say that despite the fact that several Cultural Heritage Organization offices in other cities tried to follow this example, none of and cooperate with shop owners and the people who work in bazaar to follow this path and help them to restore and repair and revitalize their bazaar. None of them were as successful as Tabriz. Okay, next one, please. Yeah, these are some photos of the area and map. But in Yazd, the difference between the method of work which was done in Yazd with Tabriz was that it was not just the cooperation between Cultural Heritage Organization and the private sector. It was a cooperation between public and private in general. I mean, there are so many different institutions and organizations, governmental or public or semi-public, and also different private sector, not just the shop owners, the owners of other parts of the city as well. And with the collaboration, they tried to safeguard and preserve the city through so many different projects, small and large. Let's go to the next slide. So the fact is that about Yazd, because in 2017, because of all these efforts and cooperations, it was included in the UNESCO World Heritage List. And since then, all of these cooperations and collaborations actually accelerated since then, and try to shape a joint program to protect and restore and rehabilitate the historical core of Yazd, with the full participation of agencies at the national and local level, and simultaneous programs by the government, municipality, private sector in revitalization of this historic area actually was followed. That despite all deficiencies, but it is still one of our most valuable experiences. As you see, the very interesting thing about Yazd is that the municipality of Yazd was the first municipality in Iran that had a particular district just for the preservation of historic core. And none of the other historic cities of Iran, their municipalities had such a thing. Even for the city of Hamadan, which was much older than Yazd, unfortunately, the historic core is divided into 4 districts of the city, and it doesn't have its own particular district for itself with its own fund and with its own experts and supervisors. So it was not, they couldn't protect it as well as Yazd. And having this municipality in particular for historic districts, we think actually has helped quite a lot to lead to this World Heritage being included in the World Heritage List. As you see the photos, it's much better preserved than other cities of Iran that has been so many reconstructions in them, new constructions in them. So the third trend is actually is done by private sector and mostly started in Kashan. So it's an adaptive and creative reuse, which means the private sector themselves, we can follow the next slide. I'll explain in that slide more, that it's a considerable wave. I mean, it's a new wave, a new movement, started from a decade ago, mostly by turning a middle-class house from 19th century into a very nice boutique hotel. And it started from there, and all of a sudden the wave got the whole historic quarter because of the amount of, because of the number of tourists that it could attract it, and the success that it had and the wealth that it brought to the area. So more and more houses were preserved in a neighborhood that not many people actually had any interest to enter. But nowadays, even at the middle of the week, you cannot find an empty boutique hotel in a cold season, you know? So it means that it was a very successful wave, and the only help that the government actually gave to this private sector was very few of them, not all of them. At the beginning had this help from a cultural heritage organization by assigning some of these historical buildings to this private sector, to these interested people who wanted to spend time and money on restoration of these buildings and revitalizing them and changing them into these boutique hotels or other. Next slide, please. I can show you some photos of that. Yeah, this is the first one before and after restoration. I got it from Aga Khan Foundation website. Next. So the same house, you see that at the moment, it has a very creative way. For example, the old water cistern has turned into a very modern cinematheque when you get inside, or the restaurant or the gift shops and all of these suites for staying with the latest high-tech, for example, infrastructures, and also workshops to show the tourists the traditional handicrafts of Kashan, or some other functions, like, for example, this one, which is a photo gallery at the moment, and they have exhibitions and galleries and so many different things, but mostly they are boutique hotels, as you can see. Next one. In Gorgan, the method of work was totally different. Here in Gorgan, actually, which is a northern city in Iran, the government played the right role for the first time, which was just working as having some projects as urban catalyst policy in the area. Next slide, please. So in the case of Gorgan at the north of Iran, we see that some projects were executed just to motivate the development of a historical quarter, and they were a step towards streamlining the urban regeneration process. So the government played the role of policymaker, the role of a supporter and facilitator. They didn't play their traditional role who were just buying these properties with the money of oil, and trying to provide the fund for repairing and restoration. Finally, they found that they cannot afford to fix everything by themselves, and they need just to work as facilitators and just to support the private sector, but they need to initiate some flagship projects and some stimulating projects actually to encourage investors to come and invest in the area and add to the general interest of residents to their old and degraded neighborhood by doing these projects. So they paved the way for the participation of other actors by doing this flagship projects and these stimulating projects in the area. The other actors, whether it's municipality, cultural heritage organization, or boards of trustees and the private sector, all of them, after this initiation by the government in the area, they started to preserve and revitalize the historical fabric following this path. So next one, please. This is, for example, another photo of Gorgan, which shows before and after restoration of a place, which is interesting in their culture. That it's not a mosque, but it's a place for gathering, social gatherings, and having, with the excuse of religious rituals, people and families are gathering quite a lot. So this is one of them, that they have plenty of that in their historic fabric. So the fourth trend is actually the example of Shiraz, which is the changing role. The municipality in Shiraz actually changed the role of municipalities in conservation approaches. Next, please, I can tell you in the next one. So traditionally, municipalities in Iran has never been dealing with conservation and protection of historic areas. They were mostly doing the reconstruction and development, and everybody thought that it's just the duty of cultural heritage organization to do that. And Shiraz has a historic municipality. They have a particular district in their municipality administration only for historic area, just like Yazd, as I said. And this historic municipality actually started to carry on a new mission in the protection of historical areas. They started to implement plans and programs to protect valuable historical structures in the central core of Shiraz, not just monuments and old buildings, historic buildings, but also public spaces, as you see at the right in photos. Whether it's an 18th century public bath at the top, or a bazaar, or some covered old alleys and pathways in the historic core. So their achievements actually during the last few years showed that municipality can play a role as one of the key actors in the conservation and protection of historic core and in the process of regeneration in general as well. Okay, so I think that's the last project. Yeah, it's just a map of the whole historic area of Shiraz, which shows their projects in the last 4 years. You see that many of their projects is just focused on the historic alleys of the historic core. And in addition to some caravanserais in the bazaar and the main public space of the city in front of the old castle of the house, the governing place of the house, which is there since 17th, 16th century. So as a conclusion, I can say that despite all these trends that we talked about, actually an integrated approach towards the method of work in historical parts of our cities is needed. Obstacles to achieve to reaching this integrated approach so far are the tremendous power of land and property market. This is our main problem, because the investors mostly are following, are doing whatever they can just to build from the beginning. You know, that's because they add to the density, and they can earn much more when they rebuild the building in its place compared to when it's just repaired at the same low level of the old building. And more than that, there's the fact that preserving historic area is not yet turned into a public demand. Unfortunately, people themselves, the owner of these old buildings themselves, they prefer to sell them to a builder, you know, sell the old house to a builder to just knock it down and build something new and taller with more built area and sell it with a better price. Or the third reason that we couldn't reach to the success that we want to is that unfortunately the life of management is so short in historic areas, not only in historic areas, in municipalities as well in general. And decision makers who should follow these strategies and methods of work and these intellectual achievements, unfortunately, professionals in the decision-making body of our authorities, their policies, their methods of work, they change with every new government. And that's a really, really big problem in Iran, unfortunately. So, and also the Cultural Heritage Organization, which is known mostly as the sole responsible for safeguarding and dealing with these issues, has no particular policy towards historic urban landscape. You know, they have a very long history about preservation and restoration of historic monuments, but when it comes to historic urban landscape, they do not have a clear method of work, you know, because and they have just done some very scattered efforts so far. For example, what I listed here, approval of historical areas in 168 cities of Iran. That's what they could do so far for a city scale. I mean, they have just defined the areas which needed more fund and more attention and more focus in 168 cities, which is much more than that, but they didn't give any detail except just defining the area, what should be done and how this then the necessary funds should be raised. And or for example, approval of a 13-point resolution in 2017 about this issue. The resolution was much more than that. They actually reduced it to just 13 points at that time, or approval of a revitalization law in 2019. So they are still in the stage of making the legal steps and making the law to continue and find the best ways for the execution of these ideas. But they haven't reached to an integrated approach so far with all other stakeholders and all other organizations who can, as I showed in these examples, who can play quite an important role. And these organizations are not yet in collaboration and necessary cooperation together.
Before we go into some wider discussion, I will have one question, because I think that one actor is actually missing in the whole presentation, and I'm very interested and very curious about the role of the citizens. I mean, not only as the owners of some properties of land, but as the users of those places, of those public spaces. Were they included in some of these projects? What the role was?
Actually, to the case of Gorgan and to the case of Tabriz, as a third and first trend, as we talk about it, the citizen and the representative of the citizen were involved. Therefore, these efforts and experience were among the project that people cooperate with the government and the other body. But as you said, it's true that the cooperation with the people or citizen are missing nowadays. But in these new trends that are following by the many other foundation, they are trying to involve the people.
Yeah, you know, exactly about Yazd, for example, you know, despite the fact that there was a huge amount of cooperation between so many different organizations, governmental, non-governmental, public, semi-public, and private sectors, the reason that there are still so many parts in historic core that is not it's not in the good situation that we expect, you know, from such a cooperation, is because people were not involved in the whole process. We never had any, I can't say never, but very few public hearing sessions, you know, that people are being involved and they know about what's going on by the authorities about the future of their neighborhoods or the community. It's just something between some representatives and some authorities, and all of a sudden just people faced with the new rules and regulations in the neighborhood. So many of these urban fabrics has been, especially in Mashhad, for example, was frozen for a long time. People couldn't build anything, they couldn't sell or buy or nothing until the plan is prepared, you know, and it took ages until all of these stakeholders and all of these authorities come to an agreement. So that quite at the early steps of involving people, unfortunately. Yeah.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
If you have questions, I mean, the presenters, if you have if you have questions, right moment to pose them.
Yeah. I have a question from Irina, actually. If we have time, I just want to ask her, because she showed a slide from 16 different institutions who were helping in the project, which was called the Open Heritage, if I'm right. So there was different universities, and even I see Tyne and Weir, and also, for example, Ghent University, Rome, Newcastle, so many universities. I'm very curious to find out what is the role of all these universities. Are they just providing intellectual help to the team? Or do they help in, for example, Tyne and Weir, which I think it's I'm not sure if it's the council, city council, or what is it exactly? Any of them are helping in fundraising, providing their necessary fund for these projects. So how is it possible? Because we do not have the experience of involving so many different institutions and organizations in one project, you know. Intellectually, yes, maybe, but how is it economically? How does it help the project? I just want to see if it helps the fundraising as well. And also,
yes, thank you. Yes, thank you for the question, because I'd really love to talk about this project. This is a huge experience for our Polish team. It's true that this is really a big consortium, even for the Horizon 2020 projects, because this is the biggest, as yet, it was the biggest program for the European Union for funding the research, and but not only research, but also with some implementation elements projects. Right now we have just the beginning of the next huge program. It's called Horizon Europe. It will be even bigger. It's almost 200 billion euros, as far as I remember. So the funds mainly are from the European Commission for the projects themselves. So the whole work in the project is being possible thanks to the European Commission. However, the competition for these funds is really very difficult. There are, for example, for this next Horizon Europe, it is expected that there will be 2 or 3 projects which will be funded in each call, and usually there are dozens of the propositions from the consortiums. So it is really quite difficult, but this is a perfect possibility to cooperate with so many countries. Sometimes also from beyond the EU. Right now, we are, unfortunately, the UK is also, after the Brexit, they are still with the consortium, of course, but we are also have a partner from Ukraine, from Lviv. So this is not only the EU countries. But more to the point about your question, the role of the universities, it varies. As you very rightly said, there are several universities, and some of us which are formally involved with other partners, as myself, it's for the association, but I'm also academic. So sometimes even people who are not necessarily involved with the academic partner, a lot of people are really from the academic environment. So in the project, we have several areas. Some of them are purely research. And of course, universities, I'm mainly involved with those. For example, I put the address of the website, so you can see in a very detailed way for what work, which partner is involved. However, as I said, there are 6 living labs. So we experiment with some practical solutions for these new innovative forms of cooperation, for involvement of the heritage community, also for the financial models. And some of the universities are also involved with the partners who operate these labs. For example, the University of Newcastle they are involved with this very practical British lab, who is the best of all of us in raising the funds. As UK, they have, of course, the huge experience of the private money involved in some heritage projects, public projects, and so on. So university is not directly operating the lab, but they are closely cooperating with this partner who is responsible for that. In Rome, this is the university who is, apart from their huge intellectual input, it's really a pleasure to work with them on this level. But apart from that, they are also involved in the management of the cooperation between the partners in the lab. There it is less commercial, let's say. There is not so much private funds involved. However, there are several NGOs, but also some businesses, and they are, as you said, about this new role of the municipality in case of Shiraz. In this case, this is a new role of the university in the cooperation also and the management of the cooperation between the partners in Rome. They have the biggest labs in terms of area. We believe that we have the big lab, because we have the whole district, but in Rome they have even bigger district, and this is their living lab, their urban lab. It's called Cooperative Heritage Lab in this case. The partners from the Hungary, it's similar. They are from the university, but the lab is located on the private land. It is the farm. It has the medieval roots, but they are cooperating with them as archaeologists, providing the knowledge how to manage this heritage site, but they also have some role as well, to activate the local heritage community, to cooperate between the local community and the site owner. And they also have the very direct involvement. They have their students who have some practical classes there, and so on and so on. So but as to raising the funds, this is happening only in labs, that we are working on the financial models, but the project itself, as I said, it has its funds, but we are obliged to provide some sustainability, so to provide some results, some effects, which will be still present when the project is finished for the future. So of course, we're looking for these different kinds of sustainability and administrative, financial, and other tools to make the results preserved in the future. And university are more or less involved often in this part too.
Very interesting. Thank you very much for your complete explanations. It seems that in Poland you have, I mean, your municipalities, unlike England, have more power than your city councils, because you didn't mention anything about city council, but I remember that when we were living in Newcastle, actually, not just Newcastle, all British cities, the city council had much more executive and fund in hand rather than municipality. Is it like that in Poland?
Yes, very, very much so. However, they are not so active. They are not, the municipality has a very active role, for example, in approaching different partners. Also, they are responsible for these public consultations and so on.
So like Iran, I think your city councils are just monitoring the activity of city council, of municipality.
Yes.
But they are not executive or fund.
Yes, but they have the last word in many cases, of course.
But they are not implementing projects directly or anything like that. I mean, the councillors of city council, they are just actually supervising body and controlling and monitoring the activity as the representatives of the public, I think, just controlling the municipality activity.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So what is the question about government? No, you don't want to ask anything. So your government is not dealing with any of these projects? Any governmental body is not involved? It's just, in Iran, it's a semi-public, it's not quite public. It's not a governmental body, of course. So, but for example, Cultural Heritage Organization is a governmental body, which plays an important role, as I said, in the case of Tabriz, or for example, Ministry of Housing or Urban Development, or even Ministry of Internal Affairs in Iran. Even they have a deputy, they have what is it? They have a part, an important section, Ministry of Internal Affairs for developments, urban developments. But you do not have any governmental body dealing with any of these projects in historic areas. Is that correct?
Not exactly. I think this is also part of our research in the open heritage. If you find it interesting, we did a research on 15 countries in Europe, and part of the research was exactly this information: how much the government is involved and what happens on the local level, and it really varies. And in Poland, we have quite a complex structure regarding the listing monuments, because we have national monuments, and this happens on the country level. The conservation happens on the country level, with the offices are on the regional level, let's say. However, in projects like ours and the regeneration programs or revitalization, or whatever we call it, this is the responsibility of the municipality, and I believe that next week, my colleague from the municipality who is responsible for the current revitalization program, he's the man responsible for all of things happening. And also the master plans right now are the responsibility of the municipality. For me, it was also very interesting what you said about this new role of the municipality. Do you think it will be the developing trend, let's say, in Iran? Do you think that municipalities are as important actors in the future?
Well, to be honest, the municipalities played a role in historic areas before Shiraz as well, but not as direct as Shiraz. For example, they had some organization which we call the Renovation Organization of Municipality. That's what it is called. In Ghazvin, for example, they repaired and restored and revitalized the largest caravanserai and most important part of the historic bazaar of Ghazvin, which is very successful, to be honest. Or for example, in Tehran, they are dealing with degraded and parts of the historic parts of Iran, in Tehran, sorry, because among the 22 districts of Tehran municipality, which is the capital and the largest city, District 12 has covered all historic core of the city. And they are dealing quite a lot with that. They have their own office, and they are dealing with this stuff. But in it's architects and sociologists and all of these interdisciplinary teams that you were talking about, your own project, dealing in these offices that are private. Actually, these are the consultants. For example, an architect established this local office of this Renovation Renewal Organization of Municipality in that district. That's one of the offices that, for example, I had long time ago in District 15, just at the periphery of the historic core, but it was a very degraded area of Tehran, just to help the inhabitants and the residents of the area for the renewal of their houses, or if there were, we were not dealing with preservation of historic stuff, but my colleagues who were, for example, their office was in District 12, which was the historic core of the city. They were not just dealing with renovation, they had with.
But in answer to your question, I can say the others experience, even in a small city like Kong in the south of Iran, or even in Rasht, and another small city like Naraq. This municipality played the role of cultural heritage organization, and they were very successful experience on that time.
Yeah, when the city is smaller, it seems that they are more successful. They are more local. They are closer to citizens.
Yes,
I know it better.
Yeah.
You know? But for large, because Shiraz is quite a large city, Shiraz is for a long time, it was the second largest city of Iran after Tehran. We have a very huge difference. It's just like England, the difference of population between London and other cities, Tehran has the same population, about 12, 13 million. And then the rest of our large cities are not 2 million at most. So, but Shiraz was one of them. But the cities that are even less than 100,000, less than 50,000, even, for example, at the city of Naraq. But they are very, very ancient and old historic cities. For example, the Bazaar of Naraq is one of the finest, and the municipality played quite an important role, to protect it. It depends it depends on the power and success of municipality in compared to the local office of cultural heritage organization in that city, So they are not all, they not all have the same power in all cities. That's the problem. Yeah.
So I would have one last question to both of you. Actually, if you could, all the three of you, if you could say, what is the main thing that you would find extremely important in orchestrating the partnership or organizing the partnership between all the partners that should be on board? what do you think it's necessary?
Improving the knowledge of people for cooperating and working with the other body. Actually, as our colleagues say, the people are the key actors in this process. And if we try to improve their knowledge, they will answer the government and the other responsible body to preserve their historic environment.
There will be no demand, if there is not enough education. At least the case of Iran is like that. We really need, we worked so hard during the last 2-3 decades, to attract the attention of public towards these historic areas. From the beginning, I mean, it's a legacy that we have from 1960s, 70s, and the Americanization of the country, at that time. So people just love wider streets and larger and brighter houses. And it took us a long time. And thanks God, the new generation, the baby boom generation who were born even after, 2000, at the moment, not more than 20 years, or people with almost 30 years, the middle ages and older one actually are still carrying the legacy of 1960s and 70s. They prefer the American lifestyle, but the younger ones are so eager to preserve this stuff. Most of our NGOs, when it comes to historical areas of our cities, are run by younger generation people. And they love it, especially because in Tehran, for example, and so it's a new wave in other cities, we've got, especially during the last 2 years of Corona, we had all of a sudden these cafe culture in historic houses, which were all attracted by investors for knocking down and building high rises. Now people are, owners of these houses are willing, when they say how successful are these cafes, all of them are multifunctional with galleries and bookstores and, so many different events in them, with a cafe on the side or a small cinematheque on the side or somewhere to play, because the new generation is just so hungry for these kind of cultural places. And we just hope, our hope is just towards the new generation, because our parents were not as interested as keeping these old buildings, especially because, as I said about the land and property market force, there's a huge difference between keeping the historic building and the historic area compared to the renovation. So as Dr. Sahizadeh said, I think the most important force power is just increasing the knowledge of public and making them respecting more and more the historic area. Don't just give up because it's not good and it's degraded now, giving them best examples that we can as this flagship projects, and improve the quality of life in these areas, and especially starting with public spaces, improvement of public spaces, and to make people more and more interested in these areas. Yeah.
So cherishing what's there and not only following the new and predicting and growing. Okay.
Yeah.
Katarzyna, what would you stress or emphasize in such a project?
I totally agree that we can preserve our heritage only if we all want it, and if we all see the values of it. So I think it's very important. If I were to say some very simple practical thing, we need time sometimes to make people cooperate. Because sometimes we say, okay, we have to start the project next month. We have no time for discussions, for involvement of various stakeholders, or we don't have time for the meetings. We don't have time to think before we do something. And of course, it's true that sometimes it's really important to do something and not to delay some actions. But what I think is crucial is really have time to involve people, to talk, to discuss, and to find the best way to preserve the heritage and reuse the heritage areas and sites.
I think actually you're both stressing maybe the same thing, that it's very important to make people feel involved. You used the phrase, Katarzyna, you used the phrase tailoring the goals, like making people feel responsible for what they have in common, for the cultural heritage, and really find those different needs and interests implemented in the definition of the goal, so that they were motivated to work together. And it takes time, as you say, Katarzyna. Yeah. Okay, so I would like to thank you all.